When we think of ancient civilizations, the same big names tend to come up. Egypt, Greece, Rome, maybe the Maya or Mesopotamia. But for every civilization that made it into your history books at school, there are dozens more that thrived, innovated and vanished, leaving behind only ruins and mysteries. So today, we're diving into 5 ancient civilizations you've probably never heard of, but absolutely should have. The Norte Chico, the forgotten builders of Peru. Long before the Inca built their mountain cities, an older culture thrived on the dry coast of Peru, the Norte Chico civilization, also known as the Cara Soup. We're talking about a society that dates back to 3500 BCE, around the same time the pyramids were being built in Egypt. But here's the thing, the Norte Chico had no pottery, no written language, and seemingly no warfare. Instead, they built monumental cities out of stone and earth, including Caral, one of the oldest cities in the Americas. Archaeologists have found massive step pyramids, plazas for public gatherings, and even flutes made from pelican bones. Their economy wasn't based on grain farming like in Mesopotamia. Instead, it was built on fishing and cotton cultivation. The cotton wasn't for clothes, it was used to make fishing nets, which fueled trade up and down the coast. This cooperation between inland farmers and coastal fishermen created one of humanity's first complex societies in the Americas, 1,000 years before the Olmecs. But the Norte Chico left no evidence of warfare or defensive walls. Instead, it seems their civilization was held together not by kings and armies, but by religion and trade, a peaceful path to complexity that challenges what we thought we knew about how civilizations began. The Indus Valley's mysterious neighbours, the Oxus civilization. You've probably heard of the Indus Valley civilization, the people who built grid-planned cities like Mohenjo-Daro. But have you ever heard of their mysterious trading partners to the north, the Oxus civilization, also called the Bactria Margiana Archaeological Complex, or BMAC for short? The Oxus people lived across what's now Turkmenistan, Afghanistan and Uzbekistan, in fortified oasis cities surrounded by deserts. Their urban centres like Gonor-Dep were filled with palaces, temples and advanced irrigation systems. They were brilliant metalworkers, producing intricate jewellery from gold, silver and lapis lazuli, materials they traded as far as Mesopotamia and the Indus Valley. But the really intriguing part? The Oxus seemed to have ritual fire altars and even early forms of Zoroastrian-like symbolism, possibly influencing later Persian religions. And then they vanished. Around 1700 BCE, their cities were abandoned. Some theories point to climate change, others to the arrival of the Indo-Iranian migrants who absorbed and replaced them. For thousands of years, the Oxus were forgotten, until Soviet archaeologists rediscovered them in the 1970s, rewriting the early history of Central Asia. The Nok culture, West Africa's mysterious Iron Age pioneers. When you think of ancient African civilizations, Egypt usually dominates the story. But deep in what's now Nigeria, the Nok culture was doing something extraordinary, smelting iron before almost anyone else in sub-Saharan Africa. The Nok flourished for over 1,000 years, beginning around 1500 BCE. What's remarkable is that they seem to have developed ironworking independently, a huge technological leap that transformed farming, hunting and warfare. And then there's their art. The Nok are famous for their terracotta sculptures, expressive human figures with elaborate hairstyles, almond-shaped eyes and intricate jewellery. They're amongst the oldest known sculptures in Africa south of the Sahara. But here's the mystery. We don't even know what language they spoke, what they called themselves, or even why they disappeared. Their settlements were likely rural and scattered, so very few traces survive. Still, their influence may have lived on in the later West African kingdoms like Ife and Benin, whose bronze and terracotta art bears striking resemblance. So the next time someone claims sub-Saharan Africa was isolated from early technological revolutions, remember the Nok, the iron-smelting artists who were way ahead of their time. The Lycians, the democratic pirates of ancient Turkey. Hidden among the cliffs of southern Turkey lie hundreds of Lycian rock tombs, elaborate burial chambers carved straight into the mountainside. But the people who built them, the Lycians, were more than just master stonemasons. They were early pioneers of democracy, and they were occasional pirates. The Lycians lived along the Mediterranean coast between Greece and Persia, and by the 5th century BCE, they had formed a federation of city-states. Each city elected representatives to a federal assembly that made collective decisions, kind of like a mini United Nations of the ancient world. Even the Romans later praised the Lycian League as one of the fairest and most efficient systems of government ever devised. In fact, some historians think it inspired the framers of the US Constitution. But politics aside, the Lycians were also known for their fierce independence. They resisted Persian domination, clashed with Greek navies, and at times, yes, turned to piracy. Their rock-cut tombs, designed to resemble wooden houses, reflect the beliefs that the dead continued to live, much like the living, in comfort overlooking the sea. Eventually, Lycia was absorbed by Rome, but their ideas about federal democracy lived on, quietly shaping political thought centuries later. The Kingdom of Aksum, Africa's lost superpower. Our last civilization on the list isn't entirely unknown, but it deserves way more attention than it gets. Meet the Kingdom of Aksum, an ancient African empire that once rivaled Rome, Persia, and China. Based in what's now Ethiopia and Eritrea, Aksum rose around the 1st century CE and became a global trading hub connecting the Mediterranean, Arabia, and India. They exported gold, ivory, and frankincense, and imported silks and spices. Aksumite merchants used their own written script called Ge'ez, and the kingdom minted its own gold coins, the first African state to do so. But perhaps most notably, Aksum was one of the earliest nations to adopt Christianity, long before most of Europe. King Ezana, who ruled in the 4th century CE, even had coins inscribed with the Christian cross, nearly a century before Constantine made Christianity Rome's official religion. Aksum's stelae, giant stone obelisks, carved from single blocks of granite, still tower over 20 metres high, marking royal graves and demonstrating the empire's engineering genius. At its height, Aksum controlled parts of Yemen across the Red Sea and was recognised by the Persians as one of the 4 great powers of the ancient world, alongside Rome, China, and Persia itself. Eventually, environmental changes and the rise of Islam shifted trade routes away from the Red Sea, and Aksum slowly declined. But its legacy survives in modern Ethiopia's language, religion, and national identity. So what do all these forgotten civilizations have in common? They remind us that human progress wasn't linear or centralised. Civilization didn't just happen in Mesopotamia or along the Nile. It happened everywhere. From the deserts of Turkmenistan to the cliffs of Turkey, from African savannas to Andean valleys, people were innovating, building, trading, and thinking in very complex ways. And yet, because they left behind few written records, or were later overshadowed by empires, their stories faded from memory. But archaeology is changing that. Every decade, new discoveries pull another lost civilization out of the shadows, rewriting what we thought we knew about the ancient world. So next time someone tells you that civilization began in one place, you can tell them, no, it blossomed absolutely everywhere. Thanks for watching. If you learned something new from History of the World and this video, click subscribe.